Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, at least 49 people are dead in 2 coordinated terror attacks on mosques in New Zealand.
Some people had blood on their body and some people were limping. At that moment, I realized that it was really serious.
We have a live report on response across the world and here in San Diego. Plus, students all over the world walk out of class in a global climate strike, what they're demanding. And an in-depth look at our public transit system, what's changing and why ridership is increasing. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. It's Friday, March 15th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Susan Murphy. At least 49 people are dead and dozens of others injured in what's being called a racially motivated terrorist attack in New Zealand. Police say a gunman walked into 2 different mosques and opened fire on adults and children, not only shaking the Islamic community, but people all over the world.
This unprecedented, abhorrent event is, as you have heard the Prime Minister tonight, now classified as a terrorist event.
In a coordinated terrorist attack, at least 1 gunman takes the lives of dozens at 2 separate mosques in New Zealand. The mosques are just miles apart from each other. People were gathered at the mosques for Friday prayer. According to police, the gunman had a camera strapped to his head and live-streamed part of the attack on social media. Along with several guns found at the scene, 2 improvised explosive devices were found strapped to a car on the street. Witnesses described the moment the shooting began and say the suspect fired at random.
So it started in the main room because the shooter must have come through the hallway, and I was in the side room, so I did not see who was shooting, but I saw that some people were running out through my room where I was in, and also I saw some people had blood on their body and some people were limping. At that moment, I realized that it was really serious.
I just heard news that my friend Mr. Yasser, his father is on visit here. They were just coming in a car from the side street, just looking at parking, and those guys, they're firing from the car, and his father got 2 bullets, one here and one somewhere else. He's in a hospital. He was not even in the mosque. They just saw them, they looked like, Muslim, they just fired.
However, some in the community are refusing to let the attack shake them.
Bad people can be anywhere. This is not a matter of religion. This is not a matter of society. 1 person bad doesn't mean whole society is bad, or 1 person good doesn't mean whole society is good.
So far, 1 man in his late 20s has claimed responsibility for the attack. He was arrested and charged with murder and will appear in court Saturday morning local time. Authorities say the attack was driven by white nationalism. The suspect allegedly posted anti-immigrant and anti-Muslim motives in an 87-page manifesto online. At a news conference in Washington today, Nihad Awad, the National Executive Director for the Council on American Islamic Relations, or CARE, asked President Trump to condemn the attacks.
Today, the terrorist has quoted the most powerful person in the world, President Trump. And I would like to address Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump, your words matter. Your policies matter. They impact the lives of innocent people at home and globally. And you should condemn this, not only as a hate crime, but as a white supremacist terrorist attack.
The Islamic community is responding here in San Diego also. Let's go live to KPBS reporter Jean Guerrero for more on a news conference that just wrapped up. Jean?
Yes, about 100 people gathered here at the center of Islam First in San Diego, and they gathered here to pray together and to mourn the 49 lives that were lost and to denounce the violent acts. The common thread in the conversation between multiple faith leaders, immigrant rights groups, current and former law enforcement was the idea that we need to start taking the threat of white supremacy seriously. One of the speakers was Imam Taha Hassani. Here's what he had to say.
49 innocent people who were killed are not just Muslims, they are humans. Attacking worshippers in their houses of worship is evil.
Bishop Cornelius Bowser also spoke. He talked about the gangs in San Diego and how there are often criminal watch groups to monitor them. And he talked about how we need to do this as well for white supremacist groups. He talked about the need for accountability.
When you look at white nationalism and when you look at white supremacy, it's a gang. And they most definitely need to start documenting it, and they need to start surveilling them. They need to start holding them accountable. If they're spilling this hate that's leading to violence, they need to be arrested and put in jail.
Earlier today, the San Diego Police Department put out a statement saying that hate and violence have no space in our community. They said that although there's no specific threat to San Diego, there will be an increased police presence at areas of worship and called on the community to report any threats of violence that they overhear so that they can keep the community safe. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
And Jean, is there anything else taking place locally for the victims of the attack?
Yes, they talked about how on Sunday at Balboa Park at 6 p.m. they'll be holding a candlelight vigil to mourn these 49 people who were killed. Back to you.
Thank you, Jean. President Trump offered his condolences after the attack. He added he does not think white nationalism is growing and thinks it's a small group of people with very serious problems. Meanwhile, President Trump issues his first veto, rejecting the congressional resolution to block his national emergency declaration for the southern border. In February, the president issued the declaration, sidestepping Congress to secure billions of dollars for a border wall. A resolution was quickly formed to overturn the executive order, which was passed by the House last month and the Senate yesterday. Both the chambers did not reach two-thirds support to override the veto. Students all over the world, including right here in San Diego, walk out of class in solidarity for global climate strike.
What do we want? Climate justice! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Climate justice!
Students from High-Tech High Charter School of San Diego and Patrick Henry High participated in a small march downtown. Outside City Hall, they called on city leaders to confront our changing climate. Students like senior Hannah Mitchell at Charter School of San Diego say they want climate change to be taught in classes.
I think it's something that we don't talk about enough, so people don't have all of the facts and information that they need. So that's kind of more so our goal, is to get this knowledge out there and give people the facts and evidence that they need, because this isn't just a political standpoint.
Students say teaching climate change in classes would inspire others to become involved in curbing global warming. Students from Hilltop High in the South Bay held a similar strike today at Chula Vista City Hall. The San Diego District Attorney has decided officers who arrested Aaliyah Jenkins were not reliable for her death in custody. Last November, Jenkins was traveling with two men in a car that was stopped in La Jolla. She was arrested on an outstanding warrant. Once in custody, she vomited in a police car, and police say they told him not to call an ambulance for her. District Attorney Summer Steffen said Jenkins died accidentally of a drug overdose due to the large amount of methamphetamine in her system. She said police can't be held responsible for it.
Criminal negligence requires extreme circumstances and actions to show a disregard of human life or an indifference to those consequences. It requires more than ordinary carelessness, inattention, or mistake of judgment. We have determined there is no evidence that the officer acted or failed to act in a manner that rises to the level needed to make him criminally liable.
Toxicology testing revealed Aaliyah had 17 milligrams per liter of meth in her blood. That is far above what is considered a lethal dose. The mosquito-borne West Nile virus made its first appearance of the year in San Diego County this week. A dead hawk found in the East County tested positive for the virus. Earlier today, I talked to a vector ecologist who is urging people to take precautions.
The one thing you can almost always bank on is more rain equals more bugs. Get ready for a very buggy spring, folks. But that doesn't mean we're necessarily going to have an outbreak of mosquitoes.
Chris Conlin is San Diego County's supervising vector ecologist. He says mosquitoes like standing water, and currently much of the water from the recent rains is still flowing across the region. But they also like warm temperatures.
So the warmer it is, the faster they can complete a generation. So those mosquitoes that are taking maybe several weeks right now to complete a generation will take maybe as little as 7 to 10 days.
That's why Conlin is warning that the region's West Nile virus season has arrived. He says the disease is generally transmitted from bird to bird via mosquito bites.
But on occasion, those mosquitoes sometimes will bite a bird, pick up the infection, and then at some point later on down the line bite maybe a human or another animal.
Conlin says last year, 10 people in California died from the disease and 215 others were infected. The year before, the virus killed nearly 4 dozen people. Most people infected with West Nile virus don't show symptoms. For the 20% who do have symptoms, they include headache, fever, rash, and in severe cases, paralysis and death. Conlin says West Nile carrying mosquitoes aren't the only concern here.
We have multiple species of mosquitoes here. There's about 24 native species of mosquito, and we now have 3 invasive species that are of concern.
Conlin is urging people to take precautions to avoid mosquito bites, including wearing repellent and dumping out standing water from around your home.
If you have standing water around your home, option number 1 is just get rid of it, dump it out. Option number 2 is cover it up so the mosquitoes don't have access to it.
People are encouraged to report dead birds and green pools of standing water by emailing vector@sdcounty.ca.gov or calling 858-694-2888. The county also has a Fight the Bite app available at the Apple and Google App Stores. 2 big decisions are coming up related to San Diego's pension reform measure, Proposition B. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says one will come from the U.S. Supreme Court.
Last summer, the California Supreme Court ruled San Diego violated state labor laws when it placed Prop B on the ballot in 2012. Prop B was a citizens' initiative supported by conservative groups and then-Mayor Jerry Sanders. It eliminated guaranteed pensions for most new city workers and instead offered them 401k retirement accounts. The city appealed that decision to the U.S. Supreme Court, which will announce Monday whether it plans to take the case on. Now, at the same time, a state appellate court is deciding what to do with Prop B, which is still in the city charter, and whether to force the city to bring newer employees into its pension system. That decision is expected in the next 3 months. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
You're more likely to be struck by a car in City Heights than most other San Diego neighborhoods. KPBS reporter Taryn Mento says an upcoming class for the community will teach bicycle riders how to stay safe amid these dangers.
Students at the San Diego County Bicycle Coalition's Road Safety course will learn how to quickly respond to emergency situations. The 3-hour course doesn't eliminate all risks on the road, but teaches riders how to mitigate them. Studies show City Heights has a high concentration of collisions, but the Bike Coalition says the majority of cyclist injuries are actually caused by rider error. That includes catching your laces in the bike chain or hitting a pothole. The course will also address those situations. The next class is Saturday at the YMCA near City Heights. Taryn Mento, KPBS News.
San Diego's public transit system has been struggling with declining ridership over the past few years, but recent data suggests that trend may be ending. At the same time, city officials are embarking on a number of policy changes intended to boost transit ridership in the future. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says the city just might be starting to take public transit seriously.
Cars. Love them or hate them, for most San Diegans, they're a necessity. And for much of the city's recent history, public transit hasn't been top of mind.
I think there's an old school mentality about what transit's for. So
Colin Parent is executive director of the transportation think tank Circulate San Diego.
This is not just in the San Diego region. This is a nationwide problem where we think of transit as just this form of welfare for poor people who can't afford a car. And there's a role for that, but also transit is about connecting communities, it's about economic development, it's about helping people get around. And so we need to really think about designing our transit system in a way that really helps achieve those goals.
Parent sees change on the horizon. Mayor Kevin Faulkner is taking a leadership role in improving transit to the airport. Hassan Ikrada, the new director of the regional transportation agency SANDAG, wants to make transit a bigger part of the county's long-term planning. And last year, City Council President Georgette Gomez was elected chair of the MTS board. She says she's trying to improve coordination.
MTS cannot operate isolated from the city, nor the city can't operate in isolation from MTS. We got to start connecting the efforts, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Earlier this year, Gomez asked city engineers to create a bus-only lane on El Cajon Boulevard, one of her district's main thoroughfares, to improve transit reliability and speed. The project is starting a pilot phase this summer. Gomez has also supported policies to allow denser housing around transit hubs, and she's involved in a talk on a 2020 tax measure that would fund improvements to MTS infrastructure and operations.
The writers that currently write the system want a better system. They want a faster route. They want to get to where they need to get to in less than 2 hours. And I get that. So we need to improve the system for the current riders. But if we were to do that, I'm a firm believer that we can attract new riders.
MTS ridership hit an all-time high in 2014, but it's been falling ever since, here and across the country. Observers blame low gas prices, competition from Uber and Lyft, and growing car ownership rates, enabled by a strong economy. But that trend may be changing. MTS ridership is up slightly this fiscal year. On a special free ride day last October, the system carried an extra 57,000 passengers. MTS CEO Paul Jablonski says that shows people want alternatives to cars.
Those are people that have choices now, otherwise they'd be riding. So we think that there's a good market out there for increase, and we need to tap into that.
San Diego's Climate Action Plan set a goal for transit ridership in 2020. Next year, 12% of people living within a half mile of a major transit stop are expected to be commuting by bus or trolley. All signs are pointing to the city missing that target.
If we want to see ridership continue to grow, the transit agencies are going to have to make some different choices.
Colin Parent says there's more the city and MTS could be doing, like allowing free transfers to encourage more occasional ridership.
Right now, we're one of the only regions in the United States of large transit agencies where there's no free or reduced transfers. I mean, that's a major barrier that needs to be solved. We also don't have bus-only lanes. We make it so that buses have to muddle through the same traffic that cars do. We can change that. And making those kinds of changes make transit more accessible. It makes it run faster and makes it a more competitive and attractive choice for people.
If the MTS tax measure makes it on the ballot next year, that could provide a real test of San Diego's commitment to making transit a true alternative to the car. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
That MTS tax measure is still in the planning phase. The agency is expected to release polling results soon. The rain is gone, but the wind remains in San Diego. However, the weekend is expected to bring a little warmth. Meteorologist Daji Azwad has our forecast.
As we continue through tonight, winds are still going to be breezing on through, but as you can tell from your satellite and radar, not much in the way of precipitation. Now, we are under a weather alert here tonight. A wind advisory in place out towards Ramona, Pine Valley, and towards Borrego Springs and Fall Brook, and points to our north as well outside of San Diego County. And that lasts until 1 p.m. Saturday here in San Diego County. With this wind advisory, this means we could see some difficult driving crosswinds, especially If you drive an 18-wheeler or a big vehicle, going to be a bit difficult on that roadway. You also could see some minor property damage. Trash can might get blown away, or you could be looking at the potential for some tree branches to come down. Mainly clear here tonight with a low of 50. And then as we move across the region, also seeing clear skies in Borrego Springs with a low 52, 35 in Mount Laguna, and 43 into Oceanside. Moving into Saturday, still dry and warm. We have an offshore flow that has really been promoting that warm air, and that continues for tomorrow. High pressure builds in towards Nevada as well as into Utah. And we're also looking at dry conditions once again extending even further east in towards Colorado. For your highs tomorrow, it's going to feel amazing out there. 73 in Oceanside, 81 in Borrego Springs, and 54 for Mount Laguna. San Diego topping off at 75. So that dry air continues to be in place here across much of the Southwest, even into the early week forecast. But we'll start to notice our temperatures tapering down a tad bit through your weekend here at the coast. You're going to be looking at pleasant conditions, mild air. Sunday, a high of 74. Monday, a high of 71, and remaining in the lower 70s till Tuesday. Wednesday is when we start to notice a change, chance for more clouds and the potential for wet weather. We're also going to see this trend inland. In fact, inland areas, a high of 81 on Sunday, and then retreating in your temperatures into the 60s by midweek. Desert also going to be in that warm section of air for the next several days. And out towards the mountains, winds going to be gusting, and temperatures remaining in the 50s. Reporting for KPBS News, I'm your meteorologist, Dajia Swad. Back to you.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, terror in New Zealand. 49 people shot to death at 2 mosques. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Welcome to our Friday Business Report with SDSU Marketing Lecturer and Bottom Line Marketing's Miro Kopik. Miro, welcome.
Thank you, Susan.
First question is about this nationwide investigation into parents willing to spend big bucks to send their kids to Ivy League colleges. Is this the largest college admission scam ever prosecuted by the Justice Department? It covers schools from coast to coast, including the University of San Diego. So how do you think this could affect the value of a college degree?
Well, it certainly is from what I understand, the largest prosecution. It really kind of rocks at the foundation and core of college education. Now, it's interesting to note a lot of these are private schools, but there's a few public schools like UCLA that's part of the mix. And that kind of creates some challenges. And there's a few dynamics that really create this circumstance. Over the last decade, it's far easier for students to apply to universities, whereas 15, 20 years ago, you can apply to one UC or two UCs. Now a student can apply to all of them. So the number of applicants to every school in the country has increased exponentially. The value of an education is still very high. That's why people are doing this. The problem is that it really disadvantages those middle and lower middle income families who want their children to go to college. Because what is clear is that although in the short term these schools will take a reputational hit, it's going to force them specifically to look at their admissions process, make sure these backdoor things with, for example, with the coaches admitting people who are not athletes to school are cleaned up and done really transparently. But the schools, both the quality of the faculty, the education, the alumni network, and the prestige is a reason for people to want to go to these schools. And that's not going to change now or in the future.
Okay, and from college admissions to the spending plan at the White House.
Washington has a spending problem, and it endangers the future prosperity of our nation for generations to come. This budget contains nearly $2.7 trillion in savings, more spending reductions proposed than any administration in history. This budget will balance in 15 years.
How does the president's spending plan affect the nation's trade deficit?
Well, you know, the announced budget recently is a real challenging budget. It's going to add $4.8 trillion to the deficit overall over the next decade. There's spending cuts in every category, from agriculture to education to Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, an increase in spending on defense. To fund some of the deficit, two things. Tax receipts. One of the problems with the tax receipts is that individual tax returns are down 3%. Business tax returns are down 23%. The business tax cut only gave us 2 good quarters. So how does the president fund the rest of it? Through the tariffs. And the tariffs actually more than doubled, from $13 billion to over $25 billion this past year. The problem is the trade deficit itself ballooned by the end of 2018 by over 20%. So even though we have tariffs on these countries, Americans are importing far more goods, and one of the problems is, even with these tariffs, trade with China, with the European Union, and Mexico and Canada, those deficits increased. The problem is that with the budget cuts the president is proposing, programs that are going to help affected industries like agriculture or export promotion, all these programs are looking to be cut, which is a real challenge for people who are trying to export and narrow that trade deficit.
Okay, Miro Kopik, thank you so much.
Thanks, Susan.
What's next for California after the governor's death penalty moratorium? The fallout from a nationwide college bribery scandal. More troubles for the Salton Sea, plus a victory for open government. Join us for the KPBS Roundtable tonight at 8:30.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. Have a great evening.